Road to the North Pole. Starts as a fun Christmas adventure and becomes an apocalyptic nightmare. Stewie and Brian reach the North Pole and find Santa is this diseased, rotting creature barely clinging to life. He's got open sores, he's coughing up blood, he's falling apart physically from the impossible demands of Christmas. The workshop is a disaster zone. Elves are dying, reindeer are sick, the whole operation is collapsing under its own weight. The show takes the cheerful mythology of Christmas and turns it into this horrifying portrait of exploitation and decay. Santa's literally being killed by children's greed, and nobody cares because they want their presents. The elves are overworked to the point of death, Santa's family is sick, and the whole North Pole is basically a sweatshop running on desperation and dying magic. It's like if you took every dark Christmas movie twist and animated it for maximum disturbing effect. The imagery alone, Santa's rotting face, the dead elves, is nightmare fuel. What makes it especially dark is that the solution isn't to fix the system, it's just to make people limit themselves to one gift per person per year. The magic of Christmas is literally killing everyone involved, so the mercy is to let it all end. Pretty bleak message for a holiday episode. Brian's death, maybe the show's most emotionally devastating moment, even though everyone knew it wouldn't stick. Brian gets hit by a car in a scene that's shockingly realistic, and there's impact, there's injury, there's no cartoon bounce back. He's just suddenly broken and dying in the street. The family rushes him to the vet, where they're told he's too injured to save. They have to say goodbye knowing he's about to be dead, and the show plays it completely straight. There's no jokes, no undercut, just a family watching their dog die while he tells them he loves them. It's genuinely heartbreaking. The funeral scene is rough. Stewie's crying, the family's destroyed, and they bury Brian in a real grave that they visit. For a few episodes, the show commits to Brian being permanently dead, showing the family grieving and struggling to move on. The absence is felt in every scene. Even though Brian eventually comes back through time travel nonsense, those episodes where he's gone are genuinely dark. The show temporarily killed off a main character in a realistic way and forced everyone to deal with permanent loss. The fact that it was always temporary doesn't change how emotionally brutal those episodes were to watch. Death doesn't usually feel real in Family Guy, but for a minute there, it absolutely did. Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. Quagmire's sister, Brenda, shows up and she's dating this absolute monster named Jeff who beats her senseless. We're talking black eyes, broken bones, the whole nightmare scenario that suddenly makes all of Quagmire's usual creepiness seem like a Disney character. The episode doesn't play it for laughs either, which is what makes it so disturbing. You've got Peter, Joe, and Quagmire watching this guy abuse Brenda, and the show actually tries to tackle domestic violence seriously. It's like watching a completely different show. No cutaway gags about chickens or whatever, just raw, uncomfortable reality. Then they decide the only solution is straight up murder. Quagmire kills him by ramming him with a car against a tree. That's the hero moment. That's how the episode resolves. The whole thing plays out like a crime drama accidentally wandered into an animated comedy. You've got this tonal whiplash where half the time you forget you're watching cartoon characters because the violence is portrayed so realistically. Brenda's bruises, Jeff's threats, none of it gets the usual Family Guy treatment. What makes it even darker is that the show is basically saying murder was the right call here. There's no legal system, no shelters, no intervention programs, just cold-blooded killing presented as justified heroism. Pretty heavy stuff for a show that usually makes jokes about butts. Hey, by the way, I'm posting pretty consistently here, so it would mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel and drop a like for the algorithm. Peter Jr.'s death. Peter's got this cutaway in The Juice is Loose, where he's babysitting a kid named Peter Jr. The baby won't stop crying, so Peter starts shaking him to make him quiet down. Except he shakes the kid so hard that he just dies. The baby goes limp, and Peter's standing there holding a dead infant he just killed through sheer stupidity. It's one of those moments where the cutaway is somehow worse than the main plot. The episode is about O.J. Simpson, which is already pretty dark territory, but then they throw in casual baby murder as a throwaway gag. The joke is basically, hey, remember when people didn't know shaking babies could kill them? Hilarious stuff, truly. The worst part is how quickly it moves on. Dead baby, laugh track energy, boom, we're back to whatever nonsense Peter's doing in present day. There's no consequences, no follow-up, just a dead kid named after Peter that exists purely as a punchline about parental negligence turned fatal. Prom night dumpster baby. Exactly what it sounds like. A full musical number about a newborn getting thrown in the trash after prom. It's got choreography, it's got harmonies, it's got cartoon characters singing cheerfully about infanticide. The song is weirdly catchy too, which somehow makes it worse. They commit to the bit completely. The baby's in the dumpster, there's rats, it's cold, and meanwhile there's this upbeat melody playing like it's a Broadway show. It's shock humor cranked to maximum. taking the darkest possible subject matter and presenting it as lighthearted entertainment. The song keeps going too, it's not a quick gag. They really milk this thing, adding verses about the baby's circumstances, making it this whole production number. You're sitting there watching cartoon characters dance and sing about a discarded newborn, and the show just refuses to cut away. That commitment to the darkness is kind of its own special horror, the AIDS Barbershop Quartet. In The Cleveland Loretta Quagmire, Peter and his buddies form a barbershop quartet to serenade this guy who's dying of AIDS. They're singing in perfect harmony with big smiles, while this man is literally withering away from disease. The scene treats terminal illness like background decoration for their musical performance. The guy's clearly suffering, clearly dying, and the gang is just belting out tunes like they're at a fun birthday party instead of someone's deathbed. It's that classic Family Guy move of taking something tragic and playing it for pure absurdist comedy without any actual commentary or meaning behind it. What pushes it over the edge is how cheerful they are about it. There's no acknowledgement of how messed up this is. They're genuinely having a great time singing to this dying man. The disconnect between their joy and his suffering is the whole joke, which is pretty grim when you think about it for more than 2 seconds. Herbert the pedophile. Probably the show's most sustained dark joke because he's not a one-off gag, he's a recurring character. This old dude who's constantly trying to lure Chris into his house with popsicles and creepy comments. The show plays it like it's just quirky neighbor stuff, but it's explicitly predatory behavior played for laughs episode after episode. The scary part is how normalized it becomes. Herbert shows up, makes some creepy comment about young boys, and everyone just moves on like that's normal quahog behavior. There's no consequences, no concerned parents, just an ongoing joke about child predation that pops up whenever the writers need some easy shock value. Chris somehow never gets actually harmed, which is the show's way of keeping it in comedy territory. But that doesn't make the character any less disturbing. You've got this elderly pedophile as a cute side character who gets his own storylines and musical numbers. Real fun family entertainment there. The thing that makes Herbert extra uncomfortable is how much screen time he gets. This isn't a quick cutaway. He's got whole scenes, whole plots, a developed personality beyond just being a predator. The show invests in making you somewhat endeared to this character who is explicitly dangerous to children. Quagmire's Quagmire flips the script on the usual funny womanizer character by putting him in an abusive relationship where his girlfriend physically beats him. You've got Quagmire, who's usually the aggressor in his relationships, getting punched and controlled by this woman. The role reversal is the joke, which is pretty messed up when domestic violence is the punchline either direction. The episode tries to make you feel bad for Quagmire, while also kind of suggesting he deserves it for all his garbage behavior toward women over the years. It's this weird karma thing where abuse is treated as cosmic justice, which completely misses the point about how domestic violence actually works. They show Quagmire getting hit, manipulated, and trapped in this relationship, and sometimes the show plays it straight as genuine suffering, other times it's presented as funny, because it's happening to a man. That tonal inconsistency is its own kind of darkness. The show can't decide if abuse is serious or comedy depending on who's getting hurt. Stewie's pregnancy with Brian's DNA artificially impregnates himself with Brian's DNA in an episode that gives us scenes of a baby giving birth to puppies. You read that right. The toddler character carries dog-baby hybrids to term and then delivers them in graphic detail. The whole thing is body horror masquerading as weird science fiction comedy. The pregnancy itself is already disturbing enough. Watching Stewie's baby body change and swell with this unholy pregnancy is uncomfortable on every level. But then the birth scenes happen, and you're watching cartoon images that have no business existing, puppies coming out of a baby in ways that break several laws of both nature and good taste. The episode commits to showing basically everything. Stewie's in pain. There's medical complications. The puppies are weird mutant creatures. They don't cut away or keep it abstract. You get the full disturbing journey of this impossible pregnancy from conception to delivery, and it's all animated in vivid detail. The fact that this is technically a baby character makes it even more messed up. Like, they took the toddler genius character and put him through pregnancy and childbirth with all the gross biological reality that implies. Someone in the writer's room pitched this, and everyone else apparently said, yeah, that sounds great. Turban Cowboy has Peter accidentally befriend a group of terrorists and almost help them bomb a bridge. The episode is packed with every offensive Muslim stereotype you can imagine, played totally straight as comedy. We're talking post-2001 terrorism jokes presented with all the sensitivity of a brick through a window. Peter's at terrorist training camps, he's learning bomb making, he's participating in activities that in real life would get you arrested just for knowing about them. The show treats actual terrorism like a wacky cultural misunderstanding, like Peter just stumbled into the wrong book club instead of a literal terrorist cell. The bridge bombing plot is played for suspense like it's an action movie, except the heroes are trying to stop a cartoon dad from accidentally committing mass murder. They stop the attack at the last second, but the fact that we got so close to Peter killing hundreds of people as a comedy plot is pretty wild even for this show. The whole episode is basically what if terrorism but funny, without any actual satirical point. It's shock value wearing a thin costume of political commentary, using real-world violence as a backdrop for Peter's usual idiocy. Lois's abortion, unaired episode where Lois is a surrogate for her friends Naomi and Dale. The adoptive parents die in a car crash on the way home from the hospital, so Lois and Peter decide to have an abortion. The network looked at this one and said absolutely not, which should tell you something. The episode apparently doesn't treat the abortion as a simple medical procedure. It leans into every controversial aspect, making it deliberately provocative. It's Family Guy trying to tackle one of the most divisive topics in America by throwing grenades instead of making coherent points. What makes it especially dark is the setup. The adoptive parents dying right after taking the baby means Lois is basically aborting a newborn she already carried to term and gave away. The logistics alone are nightmare territory before you even get into the political and ethical mess. The fact that this episode exists somewhere in a vault, finished but never aired, is its own kind of darkness. Somewhere there's a complete Family Guy episode so messed up that even Fox said it crossed the line, and that line is apparently somewhere beyond AIDS barbershop quartets and pedophile neighbors. Brian and Stewie, bank vault. Locks the two characters in a bank vault for an entire episode, and what starts as a bottle episode becomes increasingly disturbing. Brian has to eat Stewie's poop to survive. That's not an exaggeration or a joke. There's an extended scene of the dog character eating feces out of a diaper while the baby character talks him through it. The episode also features Brian confessing to suicidal ideation in graphic detail, explaining exactly how he'd kill himself and why he keeps a gun around. The whole conversation is played totally straight, no jokes, just a depressed character explaining his desire to die while trapped in a vault with nowhere to escape. They really lean into the claustrophobic horror of being trapped. As hours pass, they run out of water, the oxygen gets thin, and both characters start breaking down psychologically. It stops being a comedy and becomes this uncomfortable character study about despair and survival. The worst part is how long everything takes. The poop eating isn't a quick gag. It's a full scene with dialogue and reactions and aftermath. The suicide discussion goes on and on. The episode makes you sit with the uncomfortable moments instead of cutting away, which is effective, but also makes you wonder what you're doing with your life watching this. Peter Asment. Has Peter getting sexually harassed by his boss Angela in ways that would absolutely be a fireable lawsuit if the genders were reversed. She's touching him inappropriately, making explicit comments, using her power over him to coerce sexual situations. The show plays it mostly for laughs because the victim is a man. Peter's clearly uncomfortable and trying to escape these situations, but Angela keeps cornering him and making increasingly aggressive advances. It's workplace sexual harassment played out in explicit detail. Except the show can't quite decide if Peter's lucky or violated. The episode does eventually acknowledge that what's happening is wrong, but it takes a long time to get there. And the journey is full of jokes about how men should enjoy sexual attention regardless of consent or context. The underlying message gets muddled between harassment is bad and actually this is kind of hot. What makes it dark is seeing harassment portrayed so accurately, the power dynamics, the inability to escape, the victim blaming, but filtered through comedy in ways that undermine the seriousness. It's like the show accidentally made a good point about double standards, but couldn't commit to actually saying anything meaningful. Cleveland Jr. gets shot by Peter in an accident involving guns and typical Peter stupidity. The episode deals with gun violence, childhood trauma, and the aftermath of someone nearly dying from a gunshot wound. They show Cleveland Jr. in the hospital recovering from being shot, dealing with the physical and emotional trauma. Peter's guilt over shooting a kid drives part of the plot, but the show also uses it for the usual Peter faces consequences, then learns nothing arc. The actual shooting itself is treated seriously in the moment. There's blood, panic, emergency services, before the episode figures out how to turn tragedy into comedy fodder. The dark part isn't just the shooting itself, but how the show handles gun violence as a topic. They show the real consequences: medical trauma, family anguish, permanent damage, while also trying to maintain the comedy tone. It's a balancing act that doesn't quite work, leaving you with this uncomfortable mix of genuine harm and cartoon physics. Cleveland's reaction as a father watching his son nearly die from a gunshot wound is played surprisingly straight. You see real parental fear and anger, which makes it even weirder when the show tries to bounce back to comedy. The tonal whiplash between child nearly died and wacky sitcom hijinks is pretty severe. Stewie burns, Olivia and Victor alive. Chick Cancer ends with Stewie straight up attempting murder on 2 toddlers by burning them alive. His pretend wife Olivia and another kid named Victor are locked in a playhouse that Stewie deliberately sets on fire. These are baby characters and the same age as Stewie, and he kills them in one of the most brutal ways possible. The episode doesn't cut away or imply it happened off screen. You see Stewie light the match, you see the flames spread, you see the playhouse burning with 2 children trapped inside screaming. It's animated child murder played as the triumphant conclusion to Stewie's revenge plot. What makes it especially disturbing is that Stewie's supposed to be the sympathetic character here. Olivia wronged him somehow, typical toddler drama blown to psychotic proportions, and his justified response is apparently premeditated murder. The show frames it as a win, as Stewie getting justice, not as a baby committing a horrific double homicide. The fire itself is brutal, it's not quick or painless. The playhouse burns slowly enough that you have time to think about what's happening. 2 children are dying terrified and in agony while the protagonist watches satisfied. I mean, that's darker than most horror movies, let alone animated sitcoms. If you enjoyed this video, I'm going to be posting a lot here, so please subscribe, and thanks for watching.